you made it to another Wednesday of the 6th round, which means one thing and one thing only that matters the most this time of year, which is Wednesday, so basically this time of week, is that there's fight this weekend. Not only is there fights, but they're absolutely free and promise to be absolutely astounding. Before we get started, I just want to say good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, wherever you are around the world watching this amazing channel. And if you eat, sleep, live, breathe MMA like I do, then this is the channel for you. We're gonna get this started right away. So first and foremost, we are gonna start with a female clash at strawweight. We got the karate hottie Michelle Waterson going against, this is a hard one, Carolina Calkiewicz. Carolina Calkiewicz. Now, these are top contenders in this division, and they are killers in their respective art. The karate hottie was given that name not only because she is an attractive female, but because she is actually astounding at karate and comes from a well-versed, lifelong competitive background in the martial arts realm, karate. And boy, does she know how to use it. And she is ready to step into the octagon and show everybody why, in fact, they have the karate hottie as her signature name. Because thus far, she hasn't really been able to showcase that ability, which is great because we don't want to see someone coming in here in the sport of MMA and just be versed in one skill set. That's not what MMA is going to be about. But Michelle Waterson is coming off a crazy one-sided victory against another top opponent at Felice Hermansson, UFC 229. And now with that big win over that big name, she's now propelling herself back into title contention, and beating someone like Carolina is exactly the opponent to do that to. Before that, she came off a really nice victory, a split decision victory against Courtney Casey. Carolina is a very well-versed mixed martial artist as well, but the one thing that separates herself from the rest, minus her last fight where she got knocked out real bad against Jessica Andrade, who is also a former title contender, but Carolina, she can take heavy punishment. We actually saw long ago when she fought previous title holder in Joanna Jędrzejczyk, there was numerous times in that fight where we thought she was going to get knocked out cold to finish, but she just stayed in there. She does have the heart of a lion, and that's one of those things where this might be frustrating for Michelle Waterson, because Michelle Waterson, even though she has that skill set to hopefully keep the distance, she is dealing with a human punching bag, and a human punching bag with skills. I'm not trying to diss Carolina, but Carolina can push that pace and get hit whilst doing so, and she can push that pace for 15 minutes, and we've seen her time and time again push that pace for 25 minutes, although this only calls for 15 minutes of action because it is not a title fight nor a title contender fight. But every win she's literally had in the UFC have been via decision. Is that something that Michelle Waterson is going to be able to stand? We're going to soon find out. Don't let Carolina come in and grab you, because I'm telling you right now, she has never been rubber, but her last fight she got knocked out. And usually what happens, the trend that I see happening to a lot of mixed martial artists, is as soon as that threshold has been cracked, they're a lot easily rubbered going forward. We've seen it time and time again. That durability that she once had is her top key component of winning these fights is not as valuable as it once was, and she needs to protect her face. You need to protect your face at all times, but Carolina, you especially. If I'm gonna have to call this fight, I'm gonna say Carolina is gonna play this fight very, very smart. Take your time. It could be even a little bit boring, but when the time is right, engage and take Michelle Waterson down to the ground, wear her out, and I see her edging this fight by points, obviously via unanimous decision. Now we're going to the 145 male division, where we see previous top prospect at the lightweight division, Michael Johnson, going against previous top prospect at this current division of 145 in Josh Emmett. So Michael Johnson, we'll just start off right off the bat. He came in guns a-blazing into the UFC. Was his record very decorative? No, it wasn't. But he came in and used his skill set, which is his wrestling, and of course he's fine-tuned his boxing. He's came a long way, and he beat top prospects like who's also on this card, Edson Barboza, Gleison Tibau, Joe Lozon, knocked out Dustin Poirier, beat Andre Fili, and in his last outing, which is not impressive because I hate this dude, he's one of the worst, if not the worst member to ever come out of the SVG camp, and that is an Artem Lobov. Yes, Artem, not a fan. Josh Emmett, yes. He is coming off a brutal, devastating knockout against Jeremy Stephens, but Jeremy Stephens can knock literally anyone out if he catches them in the right spot. He just has that scary amount of power. So this is not deterring anything away from Josh Emmett's career, because just before that, he put Ricardo Lamas in a body bag. The only problem that I see here with Josh Emmett is he is coming off a 13-month layoff. I'm sure he was still shaking the cobwebs off of being finished like that for his first time in his career. So it was definitely a shot to the gut. We're going to see how he rebounds here because his wrestling, in my opinion, is of that caliber to easily null the wrestling of Michael Johnson. So I think this fight could very well stand on the feet. And if it does, maybe Michael Johnson has that crisp boxing. I get it. But Josh Emmett has hands, and they are scary hands, Michael. Having said that, let's rewind a little bit. At the beginning of their career in the UFC and coming up to this point, the only real two names that Josh Emmett has fought, he is 1-1, and that's Ricardo Lamas and his recent loss against Jeremy Stephens. Michael Johnson has been fighting current champions and former title contenders his whole UFC career. So even though Michael Johnson may show as more unsuccessful in his previous outings, when comparing the resumes side to side, it's easy to say that Michael Johnson should definitely not be counted out at this fight. The smartest thing for Josh Emmett to do is close that distance. He is more tenacious on the ground, and he is very durable and can go that 15 minutes at such an aggressive, scary, uncomfortable pace, even for that of the liking of Michael Johnson. So if I'm going to say who's winning this fight, it's going to be Josh Emmett. Josh Emmett is going to push that pace, stick Michael Johnson against the cage, and just make for a dirty, possibly for, you know, your average MMA fan, a very boring fight, but a very, very smart approach to taking this W. And I do see Josh Emmett maybe even getting this, wearing Michael Johnson out at the end of the first round, and inevitably getting that TKO finish in somewhere in the second round, and that's what I believe. Now, we're going up to the light heavyweight division, where we see previous WSOF champion and top contender in this light heavyweight division, there's no doubt about it, in David Branch, fighting a new name in the headlines, not so much in the UFC, but for your average MMA fan, and Swedish's own Jack Hermansson. Now, when we look at David Branch, I mean, aesthetically, goddamn, he's huge. And he's a monster, and he's got power, and he's got speed. His explosiveness is second to very little in the UFC. But he hasn't been that successful in his last 4 fights, going 2-2. Having said that, I mean, the people that he lost to is Jared Cannonier, who's actually set to face the previous GOAT at middleweight, which is Anderson Silva. And before that, he lost, and he lost bad, against Luke Rockhold. But he has, in between that, a fantastic finish submission victory over the one that could be next in line for that title shot in Thiago Mareta Santos. He bears significant power. He is very well-rounded. He's very strong, has a very good grappling game off of his back as well, because it's just one of those things where we look at the resume that Jack Hermansson's had, they haven't really been the most scary of people that he's beat. I mean, he ran through Thales Leites. He's way bigger than Thales Leites. So is that something to really give you that boost to come in here and take someone out like David Branch, who beat a guy that you lost to in devastating fashion, Thiago Mareta Santos, which I just talked about? I do not think this is the fight for him to really put him in that spotlight. I think he is going to get devastated in this fight. I just think David Branch is way too big, way too tenacious, and has fought way more reputable opponents. His grappling is scary, and Jack Hermansson isn't really known for his grappling game, and he doesn't really have that one-punch knockout power as well. He's not really all that scary, and I just think David Branch is going to be too much for him. Even on the ground, he has a technical submission via Von Flue choke, which I think a total of like 3 people have ever completed that in MMA ever. And if I'm going to call this fight, I do see David Branch getting out there and finishing this quickly. We know that David Branch is going to know that this young gun wants to get in the spotlight, and I think that usually opens people up from making mistakes. David Branch is going to be there willingly to capitalize on those mistakes, and I think he's going to catch Jack Emerson coming in for that grapple with like a nasty uppercut or something like that, whatever the case. But Jack Emerson's going to get finished in this fight. Now, when we go to the main event with 2 explosive fighters, which I promise to be one hell of an exciting fight, be it 25 minutes or 25 seconds, fireworks are gonna fly. Why? Because first of all, we have Justin Gaethje, the firework master, going up against Edson Barboza. Edson Barboza has the craziest kicks in the game. He has the nastiest spinning wheel kick to Terry Edom way back in the day, which is, in my opinion, still the best knockout the UFC or the MMA world has ever seen. He's got numerous knockouts, technical knockouts by leg kicks, liver kicks, spinning back kicks, spinning back elbows, flying knees, Beneil Dariush. And he's gone the distance and one-sided previous champions like Gilbert Melendez and Anthony Pettis. Stand-up game is where he wants to keep it, because listen, if this was a kickboxing organization, which I get it's not, you put all these fighters together in a big tournament, Edson Barboza is coming out on top. You get it. It's real. And then we look at Justin Gaethje when he was in WSOF as the champion there. There was so much hype about him, the way he's a killer and has his killer instinct. And P.S. fact, by the way. Ow! Then he came over to the UFC and went 2-2, first and foremost, knocking the hell out of Michael Johnson, who's also fighting in this card, losing to only Eddie Alvarez and Dustin Poirier, which, let's just put it that way, they're previous title holders and current title contenders and the best in the business. And he has a victory coming off of loudmouth James Vick. But when we do look at these victories of Justin Gaethje, in my opinion, most of these victories come from the fact that he is tenacious, which, I mean, you're like, well, obviously, he's a killer. But what I mean is this striking necessarily isn't technical. He is very wild. And he lands tons of strikes, but not in comparison to the tons of strikes that he actually receives. He is as durable as literally anyone in that division. And it doesn't matter if he knows that now he's susceptible to getting knocked out. That's his fight style. He goes out there, he's gonna put his head down, and he is gonna swing for the fences, much like Don Fry back in the Pride fighting days. But that's gonna feed in right to the style in very much a negative way of Edson Barboza. Because we have one brawler that's gonna swing like this, but we've one man, Edson Barboza, who's so technical and so great at keeping the distance, he is just gonna chop those legs out from under Justin Gaethje. I think this is a very good fight for ESPN 2. I get it, but stylistically, it is brutal. I think Edson Barboza is really gonna showcase his abilities and probably have another disgusting highlight reel just from this fight. It's not that I don't respect Justin Gaethje, we have to call a spade a spade. Justin Gaethje is wild. He is out of control. He's fun and the fans love it, but stylistically, he's asking for a bruising when he faces these top clinical strikers. But I know this is sport of MMA, but this fight is not gonna be an MMA fight. It's gonna be a stand-up brawl, and if it goes to the ground, wow, my mind is blown. If I'm gonna call this fight, I'm easily calling Edson Barboza. But I'm gonna call him probably in the later rounds. I think this is a 5-round fight. Justin Gaethje's legs are just gonna be too much for him. I actually see him getting TKO'd via leg kicks, and he stands flat-footed. He doesn't really have a boxing stance. He doesn't have good footwork. He's gonna get clubbed, and he's gonna get clubbed hard. So I do see Edson Barboza getting this in the 3rd round via TKO, and for some reason, if I had to bet money on it, but I'm broke, so I don't. I would literally just say it's gonna be from leg kicks as well. So that's what I'm thinking. Ladies, gentlemen, everybody, thank you so much for watching. I need you guys to hit a like or a dislike. I'm serious, I don't care. Bring on the hate. Share this shit to all your friends, all your enemies. Obviously, they need it the most, and we are gonna see you next Wednesday for the next fight game. So we're gonna see you later.